It is 8:22 a.m. The Philippine Sea, 68 nautical miles northeast of Taiwan's northern coastline, in international waters where the ocean runs 4,800 meters deep, and the sky on this particular autumn morning is the kind of cloudless, high-pressure blue that makes every radar return sharp, every optical sensor picture clean, and every electronic emission in the airspace above easier to locate and characterize than at any other time of year. The visibility is unlimited. The wind is from the north at 11 knots. The sea state is 2, comfortable for small craft, unremarkable for destroyers, entirely irrelevant to what is about to happen. The sun is high enough that it is not in anyone's eyes. Everything that occurs in the next 73 minutes will occur in conditions of absolute, unambiguous sensory clarity. There will be no confusion about what happened. There will be no fog of war. There will only be the record, and the record will be complete. USS Curtis Wilbur, DDG-54, is conducting a freedom of navigation operation in international waters northeast of Taiwan, asserting navigational rights that the United States has asserted continuously in these waters, and that no provision of international law, no unilateral Chinese declaration, and no number of planned warships maneuvering aggressively in the vicinity has ever successfully restricted. She is an Arleigh Burke-class Flight 1 guided missile destroyer, 8,300 tons full load, 90 VLS cells, AN/SPY, 1D phased array radar, Aegis combat system, 2 Mark 3825mm chain guns, 2 Phalanx CIWS mounts, a 5-inch Mark 45 naval gun on the forecastle. Her crew of 280 sailors has been conducting operations in the Western Pacific for 22 days. Her commanding officer is a surface warfare officer with 23 years of service, 2 previous Western Pacific deployments, and the particular variety of professional calm that develops in officers who have been in exactly this situation before and know, from experience rather than briefing, how it resolves. She has been conducting her freedom of navigation transit for 4 hours and 17 minutes when the contacts appear. The People's Liberation Army Navy ship recognition when the AN/SPY 1D's track library returns its classification at 8:22 a.m. is immediate and unambiguous. 2 Type 05 2D Luoyang 3 class guided missile destroyers, China's most capable surface combatants currently in serial production, displacing approximately 7,500 tons, armed with 64 VLS cells carrying the HHQ-9 surface-to-air missile and the YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missile, equipped with the Type 346AA AESA radar that Chinese state media has compared favorably to the American AN/SPY 1D. They have been at sea for some time. The acoustic signature picked up by the hull-mounted sonar over the last 40 minutes had suggested surface ship traffic in the area, though the specific contacts had been hull down over the horizon. Now, they are not hull down. They are 34 nautical miles to the northwest, bearing 297, and they are on a course that the Aegis track algorithm calculates will bring them to within 2 nautical miles of USS Curtis Wilbur in approximately 62 minutes at their current speed of 28 knots. Behind them, further out at 51 nautical miles, bearing 284, a third contact. Larger, much larger. The radar return is consistent with a Type 055 Renhai class cruiser, the plan's largest and most capable surface combatant, currently operational, displacing 12,500 tons with 112 VLS cells and a sensor and weapons suite that represents the most significant single advance in Chinese surface warfare capability in the post-Cold War era. The Type 055 is a real ship. It is a capable ship. Chinese state media has described it as superior to the American Ticonderoga-class cruiser, a claim that requires careful unpacking, because it is simultaneously partially true in certain specific technical dimensions and strategically misleading in the ways that matter most in a real engagement scenario. 3 planned warships, 2 Type 05 2D destroyers in the lead element, 1 Type 055 cruiser in overwatch, on an intercept vector toward a single American destroyer conducting a freedom of navigation operation in international waters. The geometry is deliberate. The timing, the contacts appearing simultaneously from a bearing that placed them directly in the carrier of the planned FONOP track, is not coincidental. Somebody has known USS Curtis Wilbur's track, has positioned assets ahead of her, and has given those assets a mission. The mission, as the commanding officer of USS Curtis Wilbur reads it from the tactical picture at 8:22 a.m., is intimidation, not attack. The plan has not gone to war with the United States this morning. What it has done is position 3 warships, visually and electronically impressive, numerically superior, tonnage superior in aggregate, on a course calculated to arrive at a position that forces the American destroyer to either maintain her course and accept close-quarters maneuvering with 3 planned combatants in the open ocean, or alter course and give the plan the footage it came to collect. A course change. Any course change. Any deviation from the declared FONOP track that can be filmed from the plan's own bridge-mounted cameras, transmitted to Beijing, and narrated into evidence that Chinese naval power has successfully challenged American freedom of navigation in waters adjacent to Taiwan. This is what the operation is. And the commanding officer of USS Curtis Wilbur, who has been briefed on Chinese gray zone maritime tactics in more detail than most naval officers accumulate in a career, recognizes it in exactly these terms within 90 seconds of the contacts appearing on his display. He picks up the CIC handset. He makes 2 calls. The first is to his executive officer. XO, I need you in the CIC. The second is to the officer of the deck. Maintain current course and speed. Do not alter for any contact that is not on a collision course under coal regs. If anyone asks why, the answer is, we're conducting a freedom of navigation operation, and we intend to complete it. He does not go to battle stations. Not yet. Battle stations is a signal, and signals communicate information, and the information he wants the plan to have right now is that 3 warships appearing on the horizon have not changed anything aboard USS Curtis Wilbur. The modified watch condition he establishes at 8:24 a.m. brings additional personnel to the CIC without the formality of a battle station's announcement. Competence without drama, which is precisely the tone he wants to set. At 8:31 a.m., the lead Type 05 2D transmitted on the International Bridge-to-Bridge frequency. The transmission was in Mandarin, and the ship's Mandarin-qualified petty officer translated it in real time for the commanding officer. The American warship was operating in waters claimed by the People's Republic of China. Its presence was unauthorized. It was required to alter course immediately and depart the area. Failure to comply would be considered a hostile act, subject to response in accordance with Chinese maritime law. The transmission was professional. It was clearly scripted. It was legally meritless in every particular. These are international waters under any reading of UNCLOS. China's claimed jurisdictional extensions over the Philippine Sea, northeast of Taiwan, have no basis in international law, and no provision of Chinese domestic maritime law applies to a foreign naval vessel exercising navigational rights in international waters. The commanding officer's response was prepared, brief, and transmitted in both English and Mandarin. USS Curtis Wilbur was operating in international waters in accordance with international law. She was exercising the right of freedom of navigation, recognized under UNCLOS and customary international maritime law. She did not recognize any claim of jurisdiction over these waters by any state, and she would maintain her course and speed. The transmission lasted 22 seconds. Then, the radio went quiet. The two Type 05 2D destroyers separated at 8:39 a.m. The lead ship maintained her course directly toward USS Curtis Wilbur's track. The second ship altered 15 degrees to the south, a maneuver that, projected forward, would bring it to a position slightly south of the American destroyer's track while the lead ship approached from the north. A pincer geometry. Classic multi-ship harassment doctrine. Approach from two angles simultaneously. Force the target ship to monitor threats from multiple bearings. Create the visual impression of encirclement, even at ranges where no actual encirclement has occurred. The Type 05 2Ds, Type 346, AESA radar activated its tracking mode at 8:41 a.m. The AN/SLQ 32 electronic warfare system aboard Curtis Wilbur detected the emission within 3 seconds and classified it in 7, Type 346A in fire control track mode, bearing 295, range now 24 nautical miles. A fire control track mode radar pointed at an American warship is a specific communication, not an ambiguous one. It says, "We have built a targeting solution on your ship." The commanding officer read the EW report. He looked at the range. He made the calculation. 24 nautical miles is outside the YJ-18's minimum engagement range, but inside its maximum. The Type 05 2D was technically capable of weapons employment against Curtis Wilbur from its current position. He authorized battle stations at 8:43 a.m. The ship went to full combat manning in 3 minutes and 49 seconds. The Aegis combat system shifted to full active engagement mode. The 5-inch gun mount slewed toward the lead Type 05 2D. Both Phalanx C IWS mounts shifted to air search mode. The VLS fire control system began computing engagement solutions against all 3 planned contacts simultaneously, not because the commanding officer intended to fire, but because computing the solution is not the same as using it, and a fire control solution built and ready communicates something important to anyone reading the electromagnetic environment around the ship. 7th Fleet had been monitoring the situation since 8:22 a.m. via the data link feed from Curtis Wilbur's Aegis system. At 8:47 a.m., 7th Fleet transmitted 2 items simultaneously. The first was a communications relay of a message already sent to the Plan Command Authority through diplomatic channels. The United States considered any interference with USS Curtis Wilbur's lawful freedom of navigation operation a serious incident with significant diplomatic consequences. The second item was operational. 2 A-18F Super Hornets from Carrier Air Wing 5, currently airborne from USS Ronald Reagan, operating 210 nautical miles to the east, had been tasked to the operating area and would arrive in approximately 19 minutes. The commanding officer acknowledged both items. He looked at the tactical picture. The lead Type 05-2D was now 19 nautical miles out, the second 21 nautical miles on the southern bearing, the Type 055 still in overwatch at 44 nautical miles. All three contacts were in track on his Aegis display, with continuously updating firing solutions that he had not authorized and would not authorize unless something changed that required it. He looked at the time. He looked at the 19-minute countdown to F/A-18F arrival. He picked up his coffee. At 8:58 a.m., the lead type 052D altered course 8 degrees to port, a small but meaningful deviation from its previous heading. Small enough to be characterized as routine navigation, large enough to reduce the closing rate toward Curtis Wilbur's track by approximately 12%. The commanding officer noted it. He said nothing. At 9:03 a.m., the second Type 05-2D, which had been tracking south to complete the pincer approach, reduced speed from 28 knots to 19 knots. At 19 knots, its projected arrival at Curtis Wilbur's track extended from 14 minutes to 25 minutes. The geometry was softening. Not reversing, not yet, but softening. The F/A-18Fs arrived at 9:06 a.m. They checked in on the encrypted tactical frequency with USS Curtis Wilbur's CIC and established an orbit at 22,000 feet, 15 nautical miles east of the destroyer's current position. Their AN/APG-79 AESA radars were in air-to-surface mode, painting all three planned surface contacts with targeting quality tracks. Their ALQ-214 electronic warfare systems were in passive collection mode, recording every emission from the Type 346A radars aboard the two Type 05-2Ds. On the planned ship's radar warning receivers, the arrival of two AN/APG-79 emitters overhead. American F/A-18Fs with full air-to-surface weapons capability, orbiting above the engagement area in a geometry that covered all three planned contacts simultaneously, registered within seconds of the aircraft establishing their orbit. The lid Type 05-2Ds, Type 346, a fire control radar shifted from track mode to search mode at 9:08 a.m., 2 minutes after the F/A-18Fs arrived. The targeting solution it had been maintaining on USS Curtis Wilbur, built over 27 minutes of continuous track, updated continuously, ready for weapons employment authorization, was no longer being actively maintained. The radar was still operating. It was just no longer pointed at the American destroyer with fire control precision. At 9:11 a.m., the Type 055 cruiser, which had been in overwatch at 44 nautical miles throughout the operation, altered course 22 degrees to the north. The maneuver took it off the intercept vector entirely. Its new heading was diverging from Curtis Wilbur's track. The overwatch had been withdrawn. At 9:14 a.m., the lead Type 052D came to a new course, 315 northwest, turning away from the American destroyer's track and opening the range. The second Type 052D followed 4 minutes later, turning north and accelerating back toward 28 knots in a direction that placed it parallel to, but no longer converging on USS Curtis Wilbur. By 9:23 a.m., all three planned contacts were on clearly diverging courses. The closest any of them had come to USS Curtis Wilbur during the entire evolution, 14 nautical miles, achieved by the lead Type 05-2D at 9:06 a.m., the same minute the F/A-18Fs arrived overhead. The correlation was not subtle. In the CIC aboard USS Curtis Wilbur, the commanding officer watched the three planned contacts open on his display. He authorized a stand-down from battle stations at 9:31 a.m. when the tactical picture had stabilized sufficiently that maintaining full combat manning was no longer the best use of his crew's energy. He drafted a situation report for 7th Fleet. He noted the following in the report's summary section. 3 plan warships had conducted a coordinated approach on USS Curtis Wilbur during a lawful freedom of navigation operation in international waters northeast of Taiwan. The approach had been accompanied by the activation of fire control radar in tracking mode against the American ship. The planned formation had altered course and opened range following the arrival of F/A-18F aircraft from CVW-5. USS Curtis Wilbur had not altered course at any point during the evolution. The FONOP had been completed as planned. The summary was 97 words. It described with complete accuracy and no dramatic embellishment an evolution in which the Chinese Navy had sent 3 of its most capable surface combatants to pressure an American destroyer off a FONOP track and had failed to achieve its objective in every particular. The ship had not altered course. The fire control radar had not prompted a response beyond an equivalent communications of American capability. The FA-18Fs had arrived and the plan had stood down. 97 words covering 73 minutes of gray zone naval competition in the Philippine Sea, northeast of Taiwan. And every word of it was a factual account of Chinese failure. The Type 05-2D Luoyang 3 is a genuine capability. Its Type 346 AESA radar is a real sensor that represents a meaningful advance over the older surface search systems that preceded it in planned service. Its VLS cells carry real weapons. The HHQ-9 and YJ-18 are not paper missiles. The Type 055 Renhai cruiser is the most capable surface combatant China has ever built and represents 20 years of sustained investment in closing the gap with American surface warfare technology. These statements are all true, and American naval planners take the planned surface force seriously as a capability that continues to improve. What the planned surface force improvement does not change is the fundamental strategic reality demonstrated this morning. A single American Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, operating alone, continued her freedom of navigation transit through waters northeast of Taiwan, despite being approached by 3 planned warships, including the plan's most capable cruiser, without altering her course by a single degree. The fire control radar that the Type 05-2D pointed at her for 27 minutes did not produce a course change. The pincer geometry did not produce a course change. The numerical and tonnage disparity, 3 planned ships against 1 American destroyer, did not produce a course change. What produced a planned course change was the arrival of 2 F/A-18Fs from a carrier operating 210 nautical miles away, which is itself a demonstration that the American ship was never actually operating alone. It was operating as part of a theater-wide network, whose reach and response time the plan's planners had apparently not fully credited in their operational planning. USS Curtis Wilbur completed her FONOP transit and departed the operating area on her planned schedule. The two FA-18Fs recovered aboard Ronald Reagan. The 7th Fleet diplomatic message was delivered through the appropriate channels. And 3 planned warships, 2 Type 05 2D destroyers, and 1 Type 055 cruiser, representing a combined investment of approximately $3 billion in Chinese naval capability, returned to their base, having accomplished nothing except the generation of an intelligence package that American Signals Intelligence will use to update the threat library for Type 346, a fire control radar, the tactical data link architecture of the planned Surface Action Group doctrine, and the behavioral parameters of plan commanding officers in gray zone confrontation scenarios. The plan went home with footage of their own ships turning away, while an American destroyer continued her transit. That footage will not appear on Chinese state media. The Philippine Sea is not Chinese territorial water. It is not a Chinese maritime exclusion zone. It is not subject to any provision of Chinese domestic law that applies to American naval vessels exercising their internationally recognized navigational rights. USS Curtis Wilbur sailed through it because she had the right to sail through it, because the United States Navy has been exercising that right continuously for 8 decades, and because no number of planned warships on an intercept vector has ever successfully changed that fact. 73 minutes, 3 planned warships, 0 course changes by the American destroyer. The math is not complicated. Bye for now.